your favorite crab meat pizza is here. My daughter-in-law places the plate before me, her tone unusually sweet. Mom, eat as much as you want. Her sudden kindness is enough to raise my suspicions. I'm not naive. I know when something's off. This shift in behavior feels more like a setup, and I can't help but think that my eldest child and their spouse are plotting something. It wouldn't be the first time they've pulled a stunt on me, so why should I believe this fancy pizza is any different? Their history of hostility makes this sudden niceness all the more suspicious. I refuse to be underestimated. I can protect myself, and if they're up to something, I'll be ready to turn the tables. I'm Mary, a housewife in my 60s. I've lived alone ever since my husband passed away years ago. After his death, my eldest child and their spouse offered to let me move in with them. They were newlyweds at the time, and I didn't want to intrude on their special time, so I declined. Despite this, they moved into a house near mine, insisting they were concerned about me. I was genuinely touched by their thoughtfulness, even though I reassured them that they didn't need to visit so often. When my child said, "I'm worried about you, Mom," I allowed myself to be swayed. My daughter-in-law, too, would drop by when my child was busy, saying she wanted to get closer to me. I felt proud that my child had married such a caring person, but back then, I was blissfully unaware of their true motives. Their kindness seemed genuine, but I now realize how naive I was. True kindness, without hidden motives, is rare. I was drawn in by their sweet words, but eventually, the truth came to light. One day, they visited and ended up spending the night since they had no plans for the following day. I didn't want to impose on their time as a couple, so I suggested they could go home since it was nearby, but my daughter-in-law insisted. "We want to deepen our relationship, so we'd like to stay." I relented and offered them the guest room. My late husband had built this house, and it's far too big for just me, with many rooms left unused. The room was a bit dusty, but my daughter-in-law helped clean it up. She was skilled at housework and had been helpful since the marriage, which only added to my positive impression of her. In the middle of the night, I woke up feeling thirsty and headed to the kitchen. On my way, I noticed the light was on in the living room. Curious, I peeked in and saw my eldest child and their spouse sitting on the sofa, deep in conversation. Unable to resist, I eavesdropped on their discussion. "I'm so tired of this. That old lady works us too hard, don't you think? Just hang in there a little longer. Once Mom hands over the inheritance, we're done." If her husband hadn't been a company CEO, we wouldn't have to go through all this. It's almost funny how easily she's fooled just because we're nice to her. Mom's always been emotionally vulnerable. She'll probably give us the inheritance. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. If this was true, then all their kindness had been nothing more than a ruse to get their hands on my late husband's inheritance. Were all the caring words they'd said to me, "We're family, we want to support each other," just lies? Why were they so obsessed with the inheritance? I never noticed them struggling financially, but maybe they were hiding something. Could they really be so desperate for money? I needed to understand what was driving them to behave this way, so I started asking around the neighborhood and among friends. What I discovered was shocking. Both of them were deeply involved in gambling and had racked up enormous debts, amounts they could never repay with ordinary jobs. I finally understood why they were so desperate for the inheritance. My late husband had left a considerable sum to our eldest child, though less than what I had received. They had squandered it all and turned it into debt. Their so-called kindness had been a calculated effort to secure the inheritance from me. From that moment on, I became cautious around them. "Do you need any help, Mom? We want to be there for you," they would ask. "I'm fine, thank you. I've grown accustomed to living alone. Please, focus on your own lives," I would reply. My daughter-in-law would smile and say, "I'm glad to hear that," but her expression would harden. It was clear she was frustrated that I wasn't falling for their act. Who do they think they're fooling? I don't need kindness that comes with strings attached. After keeping my distance for some time, I received a call from my daughter-in-law one day. "We need to talk." When I arrived at their home, they led me to the living room and asked me to sit on the sofa. My daughter-in-law spoke in a serious tone. "Do you have a new love interest, Mom?" I was stunned. I had no idea how she had arrived at such a conclusion. Sensing an opportunity, my daughter-in-law began to speculate. "You've been distant lately, which made me suspicious, but you're colder than I thought. Mom, have you forgotten about Dad, who worked so hard for you? Now you just want to be happy yourself. There's no one else. You're mistaken, I said, but my daughter-in-law wasn't listening. She had no evidence, yet she seemed convinced that if I had a new love interest, it would jeopardize their plans. After all, this imagined person might lay claim to my money. Mom, you should really reconsider dating at your age. Have you thought about your position? Why would you say something so cruel? I don't mean to be cruel. I'm just worried about you. Mom, what if this person is deceiving you? You'd be the one getting hurt, and I can't stand that. I could see right through her. She was only concerned about protecting her inheritance, but she wanted to maintain the appearance of a caring daughter-in-law, never revealing her true intentions. That's fine for now, I thought. The true nature of my eldest child and their spouse will reveal itself in due time. I knew I'd see their true colors eventually, and that moment arrived sooner than I expected. Happy birthday, Mom. It's just a little something, my eldest child said, handing me a bag from a fancy pizza place. Inside were several pizzas, including my favorite, loaded with crab meat. Thank you, let me just get these plated. No need, Mom, it's your special day. Sit down, I'll take care of it, my daughter-in-law said, taking the bag and heading into the kitchen. My eldest child followed to help. They might have been pretending to celebrate my birthday, but I knew better. Something was definitely up, but what? As I wondered, they returned with plates. In front of me was a plate piled high with crab meat pizza. Here's your favorite, Mom, enjoy, my eldest child said, nodding in agreement. To anyone else, this would have seemed like a joyful birthday celebration, but I wasn't fooled. There had to be something wrong with that plate. I wasn't naive enough to overlook their overly kind behavior. With my husband gone, I had to be vigilant. I would never trust them blindly. They would regret underestimating me, regret it deeply. It does look delicious, but my taste has changed recently. I'm more in the mood for the foie gras on your plate, I said, reaching for my eldest child's plate. I'd always claimed not to like foie gras, so their plate had more of it. Wait, Mom, my eldest child tried to stop me. I tilted my head, feigning confusion. Is there a problem? You used to love crab meat too, didn't you? Well, my taste has changed as well. I've developed a liking for foie gras. Is that so? Then let's not be biased. We can share both, I said, smiling. My eldest child's face turned pale. The crab meat pizza, which I had always said was my favorite, was only on my plate. It was clear they had tampered with it, hoping to set me up. My child's reluctance to eat it was all the confirmation I needed. But it looks so good, why don't you try a piece? I suggested, holding a slice of crab meat pizza up to my eldest child's mouth. With no way out, they took a bite, their expression one of dread. My daughter-in-law looked at my eldest child with concern, seeing how pale they'd become. Oh, you don't look well. Maybe it wasn't as good as we thought, Mom, she said, her voice wavering. Considering how my husband is feeling, maybe the pizza isn't that great. I'm sorry, but let's call it a day. I'll make something new. My daughter-in-law's panic was obvious. She must have realized there was no salvaging the situation. But your son doesn't look well. Why don't you stay the night? It's not safe for you to go home like this. No, we'll leave. Don't be shy. You've been so good to me. My daughter-in-law fumbled for excuses, saying, well, it was obvious she wanted to leave. For a couple trying to deceive me, they were terrible liars. They panicked at the slightest hiccup. As I observed my eldest child, something strange happened. After a few minutes, with a loud thud, they collapsed. I rushed over and found them snoring loudly. It was clear they had been drugged with a sleeping pill. Oh, they've fallen asleep, must have been tired, I said, tilting my head. My daughter-in-law snapped. Enough, why won't things go as planned? We discussed how important today was. Wake up now. She slapped my eldest child's cheek, but they remained unconscious. I was stunned, watching as their true selves were finally exposed. Ignoring my presence, my daughter-in-law began to spill everything. I've been playing the good daughter-in-law, thinking if I buttered you up, I'd get the inheritance and clear our debts. Today was supposed to be the last step. We were going to put you to sleep and steal your banking card. It's all your fault nothing worked. What are you going to do about it? She glared at me with a mix of frustration and desperation. So, that was their plan, drug me and steal my banking card. To use someone's birthday for such a scheme was beyond despicable, but unlike them, I decided to be honest. Actually, I've known all along that your kindness was just a front for the money. That's why I kept my distance and didn't touch the pizza you offered. I'm not as foolish as you two seem to think, I said calmly. My daughter-in-law's face registered shock. She genuinely believed I was in the dark about their schemes. How underestimated I feel. What kind of fool did they take me for? Sorry to burst your bubble, but I'm not as naive as you two. I've always found your sudden kindness suspicious. I even overheard you talking about the inheritance when I stayed over. You two are incredibly foolish to discuss your plans in the very home of your target. Don't call us fools, we've been trying our best. Is this best effort the reason you're drowning in debt? If so, you two are truly pitiful. You know about the debt too. How much do you know? Clearly, she hadn't expected me to be aware of the debt. The word debt made her visibly anxious, as if realizing how much I had figured out. I did some digging and found out that you two are drowning in debt because of your gambling habits. I was shocked when I discovered just how deep in debt you are, I said, watching as my daughter-in-law's face grew increasingly pale. She must have realized there was no way out. Mom, I'm really sorry. Please forgive us. We can't survive without money. Please lend us some. We promise to pay you back, she pleaded, her previous confidence gone. She was at her breaking point, yet even in this situation, she was still asking for money. I was taken aback, realizing that, to her, I was nothing more than a convenient source of financial support. Sorry, but I won't give you a single cent. I have no money for people like you. Don't say that. There's the inheritance from your late husband, right? You have money. Please help us. No, I can't trust people like you to repay me. You need to take responsibility for your own actions. My daughter-in-law looked defeated at my words, but she seemed to understand my resolve and didn't ask for money again. After that, my interactions with my eldest child and daughter-in-law dwindled. They stopped coming to my house and barely contacted me. Surprisingly, when those days came, I didn't feel lonely. Instead, I felt a sense of relief, as if a weight had been lifted, free from people who only sought to deceive me. Later on, my eldest child and daughter-in-law moved away. According to the neighbors, they were taken by some rather shady-looking people. They probably couldn't pay off their debt and were forced to flee to a distant state. They might be facing a terrifying situation now, desperate to escape, but that's no longer my concern. We are no longer connected. I reported the end of this turbulent chapter to my late husband's photo. It seemed as if his expression in the photo was one of relief. My only true family is my late husband. He was the only person who truly stood by me and supported me. Life is short, but I want to live it with strength, cherishing the memories I made with him.